Welcome to the Vacation Rental Show, How We Grow. This is your essential playbook to grow and scale your vacation rental business. With advice and insights from the best in the biz, I'm your host, Lynell Gordon.
Welcome to the Vacation Rental Show. I'm Lynell Gordon, and today I'm really excited to have Karla Saladino. Now, she is unique in our market, guys. She owned and founded one of the youngest women-owned firms in New York City, but she grossed in the top 10% of female-owned firms nationally when we talk about real estate. She's been doing real estate for over 20 years of experience in the New York market, and she is the managing partner for Mirador Real Estate. Karla, she's built a reputation as being one of the most magnetic brokers in Manhattan because she has sold and rented over 5,000 residential and commercial properties. Now, that is a crazy number, guys. I mean, I'm just saying, for you guys in real
Yeah, we're
estate, you
actually
get
up
that.
to, I have to make a change because we're up to, I do about 1,500 deals a year
Wow.
now. Yeah, my
Wow.
team and I, and it's a team of about 20. And we do, under my team umbrella, about 1,500 deals a year, which is crazy. So we're probably clear over career-wise, probably 10,000 transactions at this
Wow, that's
point.
twice as
So
much.
it's wild. It's really wild.
Now, let me ask you, you also served in the White House for the Office of
I
Management
did.
and Budget, right?
I did.
So, I mean, your team specializes in reducing vacancy rates for your clients, improving your tenant relations, and optimizing rent rolls. I don't know what that is. You're going to have to tell me because when I read that, I was like, okay, this is in New York. I don't know what we're talking about there, but I know you provide services to property owners. So tell me a little bit. What is a rent roll?
Yeah. So rent roll would be I own a building, it's got 280 units, or even if it has 5 units, and we look at it and they say, I need to bring the rent from here to here because I'd like to refinance the building. I want to pull some value out. So we're called in for special projects all the time to look at a rent roll of a building, which is your total rents collected, and see how we can start making more money for the project. And a lot of times we're called in to do that when they want to sell the building, refinance the building, or the building is simply losing the owner money every single month. They just need it to break even or make a little bit of a profit. So we take a look at the total picture. I tend to focus on the leasing strategies, ongoing strategies, renewal strategies, where my partner at work, who has a lot more experience in property management, will look at it from a property management perspective and see what bills could potentially be consolidated, outgoing expenses, arrears, tenants who aren't paying, how to handle that. And then she may come to me and say, hey, we've got a pretty large amount of tenants who just don't pay or they're illegal. How do we firm up our application system? Or let's look at the red thread that runs through these tenants and why they were let in the building. And how do we make sure that, we kind of tighten it up so we have a better rate of payment? A lot of people like to look at landlords and say, oh, they're so rich and we need to go after them. A lot of landlords that we work with are losing money every single month on their building. It happens. Expenses get higher, taxes get higher, vacancy rates, arrears. If you have a 4 unit or a 6 unit and one or two of your tenants aren't paying, your whole scheme is gone as far as cash flow and making money. Because in New York, for example, to get a tenant out, it could take a year, it could take 18 months of non-payment. It takes a really, really long time, and that could throw off all of your financial modeling. So we go in and help with that. We do what we call turnarounds, where they'll buy a building or a portfolio, it's in certain shape, and then we go in and we find the exact areas that tenants are looking at as far as a hospitality standpoint or a livability standpoint, where to really focus that money on renovation. And then obviously we can help with marketing, advertising, and getting more lead flow through. Our company is sort of designed as it's a brokerage first and foremost, but it is very much a marketing firm that we can go in there. We can go into other states and, turn buildings around. We also do lease ups when they launch a building. We help with pricing and we do the whole lease up. So we really sort of pride ourselves. Our number one skill, I think, our asset is the salespeople we have. They're really incredible. A lot of salespeople don't stay in leasing or rentals very long. Most of our salespeople are 10-year plus people. So when we're competing in a market with on-site teams and on-site agents that maybe have a year or two of experience and our people are 10-year sort of sales killers, we don't need to market as much. We have higher closing ratios. There's all different things that we put together. So that's what we do. We do it in New York. We do it nationally. It's a lot of fun.
I would love to also give shout outs to somebody who works with you. Bradley Roush is one of the people that works with you. He's marketing. And his post on LinkedIn, I love his post. I mean, he is like such a real person. And he does a really good job at presenting why to be nice to people. I'm just saying, we're in hospitality to start with, but he seems like such a nice person in the things that he puts together. So I
Yeah, and
just
he pushes me a lot because I don't like to do social media. I don't like to do, any of that stuff. And he'll push me to do, online interviews and he gets my social media going and all the videos and all the Q&A. He's brilliant. We're
I think
really
he
lucky to
pushes
have him.
everybody. I think he's
Yeah.
pushing all of us out there to be better at what we do. Let me ask you this. So recently, Mom Donnie mentioned that he wants to institute rent control. Okay, so tell me, in my experience or what I've read, it really ends up costing people more to maintain that building than to
Oh
rent it,
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
really
So
not
I
a
think
good thing. So I don't
he was talking
understand.
about, I believe he was talking about a freeze on rent stabilized units. Rent control is something a lot older. That dies out when the people pass away that are in that. Rent stabilization is still going strong. We launch it on new development buildings where they took a tax incentives. And then there's older buildings that have stabilized units. And the problem with protecting already the most protected class is curious to me. So the issue that we're having in New York is not that people are upset about rent stabilized increases. Rent stabilized increases are typically 0 to 2 or 3%. I mean, they're not much at all. They're much lower than market increases. So they're already protected. They're already living in under market value stuff. Or they are the people that moved into new developments. They're paying $10,000, $11,000 a month, and now you're protecting them from rent increases. That has a longer reach because if someone builds a building and the deal is that they have to stay rent stabilized at the launching price, but they know that they get increases between 0 and 3%, they put that into their financial model. If you change that in the middle of the game for a developer, they don't want to develop in New York anymore. The issue that we're having in New York with housing is not that rent stabilized tenants are upset by their tiny little increases. It's that we don't have enough housing. So if you start to change the rules on developers after they signed a deal, and then all of a sudden the rules change in the middle, they're not going to want to develop. The main thing we need in New York City is more housing. And they've been consistently over the last few years changing the rules on developers over and over and over in the middle of the game where it almost feels like eminent domain without a payoff.
Oh, that's
So
scary.
they did another thing last year called Good Cause Eviction, which if you bought a building with market rate apartments, when the lease was up, you can make the rent whatever you'd like to make the rent. They basically took all market rate apartments and made them stabilized by creating something where you can only increase the rent 5% plus a cost of living increase. So this year it's about 8% that you can raise rents. So I buy a market building expecting to be able to charge market rent. And then they changed the law last year that said I can only increase rents up to about 8%. So they did that also. The other thing that they did, which is causing developers to turn away from New York City, is in 2019, they pushed through a rent bill. You used to be able to improve your building if you had a building with rent stabilized units in it or apartments with rent stabilized units in it. Say you got one back. Say somebody had been living there for 50 years. They didn't give it to anyone. You get it back. It's not up to code. You have to do a large renovation. There might be lead-based paint remediation, all of that. But when you got it back, you got to charge 1/40th of that renovation, got to go into the monthly rental price. And it was a stabilized apartment still, but it went back on market, at a new stabilized price. They stopped allowing you to do that. They took that away. So in these portfolios that had these rent stabilized apartments, maybe they're $800, $1,000. The goal was, all right, a certain percentage of these I'll get back over the years. Then I'll be able to renovate them, bring them up, in rent. And that's our model. Because they took that away, all of these portfolios with rent stabilized apartments in them just became half the value. Because even if the person leaves the unit scot free, like I'm out, you cannot take any increase on that unit. So if they left and they were paying $846, why would you renovate it to put it back on the market for $846? So something that's going on in New York and part of our housing crisis is the fact that we have on estimate between 80 and 100,000 units sitting vacant, empty, because why would you pay to renovate them if you can't charge any more rent? So that was something that passed mid 2019, pre-pandemic. It's really hitting the market now. So we have about 80 to 100,000 units that we just can't use at all. And again, New York is in a housing crisis. We need more housing. So all of these things they're doing to manipulate the existing stock is just pissing off developers, and nobody wants to build here anymore because they don't know what the rules are going to be. And that's not a smart or sound investment. If you were to put the money in a CD, you get a certain percentage back. You can kind of plan that in residential real estate a little bit, and now you can't because the rules and the value of your asset keep changing.
And
So we are seeing almost no new development in New York City. We are super short on housing for people. And all of this stuff resolves itself, pricing, everything. If you have a lot of stock on the market, then prices go down. I mean, that's the only thing that's really going to do it. Trying to keep it artificially down, and certainly by freezing rents on the most protected class of people in New York that have these stabilized apartments is just so silly because it's not even like a low hanging fruit. It's just dumb,
yeah.
I'm sure it'll be nice to have frozen rent, but it's not a necessity. They have the most limited increases in New York City, and it's like, oh, let's make it even more. It's like, what are you talking about? Those are the people that are in the best position. Why aren't we trying to fix for middle income and people that have no choices in New York, like the people who are waiting for housing? That is not being tackled. That's a much more complex issue. So it seems silly. It seems like a silly thing to go after because they weren't really in any sort of pain that I
To
can
start
tell
with.
to begin with.
And it's
They
not
they
just
really had
that. Yeah.
the value of apartments, and you can assume those apartments. So if I have an apartment and then I move my sister in
Wow.
with me for a year or two, she gets to take that apartment over. There's assumption, right? I mean, there's so many rights in a rent stabilized apartment. It's like, why are you padding on more? They're the most protected group. So
And how
I'm
can they
sure it sounds
afford
good,
how can
but
they those landlords of that, how can they afford to rent it to the next tenant that comes in? How can
they
they afford,
don't.
especially like if it's, say you have like a boiler that goes out in a building. I
They don't
mean,
rent it. They close the door and it's warehouse.
yeah. My husband and I were
Yeah,
talking about this morning. We were talking about that issue this morning, and we were just like, I don't think that what's being proposed is going to help the situation at all. I think they,
it's already
obviously,
broken.
yeah,
Yeah, they're already warehouse. So again, 80 to 100,000 rent stabilized units, nobody gets to live in
right.
because you can't improve them. You can't increase the rent. So there you go. And they're not up to code, so you can't move anybody in as is.
Well, it is
Yeah.
such a catch. It really is a catch 22.
It's
Let
a
me ask
wild
you this.
market.
You've
Yeah.
been so successful in your market and in the real estate industry as a whole. Carla, what do you think is one of the most important or the most important trait for anyone that's starting a business in real estate today?
I would say, when one thing I noticed with newer real estate agents, they are all about the split. And I'm like, you don't have any business to apply this split to. Like, what are you talking? I think if you think a little larger, so they're in New York City, I think it's only like 5% of people that go for their license actually are working actively in real estate 2 years later. So
Why?
it's really difficult. You have to get listings, you have to, just like in any market, but a lot of people don't want to join a team because maybe they're getting a small base plus some overhead. My advice is to always join a team if a team will take you, because that's almost like your working internship, your first year, and that's going to ensure that you're still in the game probably 2 years later with a lot more knowledge than you get trying to figure it out on your own. So I think a lot of people go in looking at just splits, and I make on deals probably the lowest split out of anybody in our company, but I take home the most, because I know I need other help on the volume of business that I do. I'd rather almost be a listing agent,
Oh,
um,
100%.
and make that split and make a smaller split, but make much more volume. So I think flexibility and looking at the total picture, going in with no business and then trying to negotiate higher splits is something that I never really understood, because my question would be, how much am I taking home at the end of the
Right.
month? If I'm making 10% of $1 million or I'm making 90% of $700, like, what are we looking at here? I'd also much rather get the experience. I'd rather have, sort of the brand recognition of working on a good team, but getting on a team is not easy. Good teams require you to have some connections. The other thing I look for in people are people that are open to coaching, people that enjoy additional learning. We actually just all signed everybody up with Tom Ferry.
Yeah.
There's parts of it that they'll be able to take home and it'll help them grow their business. So I think an openness to learning is something, because right out of real estate school, you really don't know much, obviously. And to get that real world experience, I would volunteer to be on a team or take a smaller split to be on a team and really learn and get to work with their clients and see what it's about.
I
And work at a
agree.
company that doesn't really hire new agents unless you go in on a team.
I love the
I think
fact
it'll get
that,
you there
I
faster.
think training, for me, I left, my tech company to start a real estate company, and I think the most valuable part of doing that is I joined a firm that was really big on training, and we had, like we did training, we did weekly training, even working, after we finished our initial training, and I think there were, like, 200 hours of initial training that we were expected to go through. But those people are still my best friends. I mean, all of us
Yeah.
went through classes together. We all knew by the time we were out there working, we already knew how to do cold call. I loved cold calling. Can I just say that was like, for me personally, that was my favorite part of the day where, the
Wow.
first hour, and I know people go, oh, I hate that. Well, I didn't. I had this little room that I sat in and I had scripts everywhere. And I'd gone to every scripting class that existed. I had partners in New York and partners in Philadelphia and partners in Miami that I played with every week and did script. We just played with each other.
Yeah.
I agree, it's important to have a team. That team really teaches you how to be successful. Now, you've trained now, when I looked at it, it was over 1,000 agents. I don't know how many you've trained in your career, but you've trained a lot. Tell me, what is one piece of advice that you would give to new agents other than training? Because we've just said, you guys, you can't do it without, having people either teach you or have training. What about accountability?
I like resiliency more than even more. Accountability is extremely important. You have to own when you make mistakes, or else you can get into some real trouble in real estate. Ownership over that, but resiliency, I think, is one of the most important characteristics, because deals are going to fall apart. Sometimes it's even your fault. Sometimes it's your company's fault. Sometimes it's the owner's fault. But it doesn't matter. A certain number of deals are going to fall apart or things are going to go wrong. And I think that resiliency, you have to give yourself, how long am I allowed to be upset about this? Are there any action steps I could take to make sure it doesn't happen in the future? And then that resiliency is certainly something I would tell people to work on, because it's going to happen. And sometimes it's very unfair when deals fall apart, but it just happens, that way. And you just have to learn from them. So I think resiliency, accountability is one of those black and white issues for me. If you're not accountable, if something happened and something fell apart, or, something went wrong, that almost goes down to honesty with me, and it's very hard to manage dishonest people. So I think accountability and dishonesty almost go hand in hand for me. I I find with women especially, we almost take accountability for stuff that we shouldn't own. I think everything is my fault,
Exactly.
and
You
falls
think you
on
should
me.
handle everything. Everything is yours to handle.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's
That
it's
fell
not
apart
that
because
you don't delegate.
I didn't do XYZ. Yeah,
Yes.
and it
You
had nothing
delegate,
to do with
but
me.
if it didn't happen right, you still take accountability for it. I understand that. So,
Exactly.
learning from our mistakes, I think the resiliency part is so, putting it in terms of the fact that we're all gonna make mistakes. You never learn without making mistakes, and that is, something we teach our kids, something we teach our employees. You're gonna make a mistake. I remember when I first got out of school, my background's in programming, and I had a job at a Fortune 500 company, and I was working on the database. And my first week there, I was working in SQL, which I loved, still love it to the day. But I made a bad SQL statement and I deleted the database. Big part of it, which of course they immediately restored, which was not the big deal. But I was just devastated. You talk about resiliency. I was devastated, and I
Yeah.
went around with my head between, my head down and my tail between my legs. I was so upset that I did such a stupid thing because I'm a stupid person. Like, how did I do that? And I remember I went into my boss. My boss called me in, and he finally said, "Lynell, we got to talk about this." He said, I said, "I'm really sorry. I just don't know what I can do." I mean, this was like, I really wanted to work for this company, and I really wanted to do what I was doing. And he said to me, he said, "Lynell, let's put it in perspective. Did anyone die? Now, we're looking at a manufacturing environment where you're actually pulling glass for cable at the time. We were pulling glass for fiber, and people could get hurt. They could die and things like that. So it's like, did anybody die? I'm like, no, no one died.
Not
He's
that
like,
I know of, but oh my God.
get over it. He's like, get over yourself. And after that, I was just like, yeah, you're right. That resiliency part of standing up after you do something, admitting your mistake, and then I'm wrong. I won't ever, and I never did anything like that again. But I think in business as an entrepreneur, as the owner of a business, we're going to make mistakes. And one of the hardest things to learn is you're going to make a mistake, but you got to make a decision anyway. Just make a decision. If you make a
Yeah.
bad decision, you're going to live with it. You're going to go forward, and we're going to make bad decisions. Let me ask you this. Can you tell me, do you have a particularly memorable challenge that you faced in your career and how you came out of it?
Now I don't think they bother me as much, but I think right in the beginning when I started my first firm, we took on a bunch of units. They were kind of like behind a building. And we were told, these are apartments, so they're new development, like whatever. Um, and I took all of my time to like prep this, bring this to market. We rented them. And I realized sometimes if you do too good of a job, the landlords will come back and say, I think you did too good of a job. We need to raise all these rents. And you're like, but I already have signed deals on all these. He's like, well, I didn't countersign, so raise them. And I knew we were already kind of top of market. So one thing, and it was like my birthday, and I was like crying because I was just starting a company and we needed we needed this deal to work.
Wow.
And I get this call from his like yacht in Italy or something. And he's like, I think we could probably get more rent. You did too good of a job. I go, what is too good of a job mean? Like I did all this prep. We did, created these very like urgent open houses and high pressure to get people to bid these up. And I was so proud of the work that we did. And he pulled almost all my deals.
That
And then I
is,
had to go do it
yeah.
again. And I was
Oh,
so
wow.
furious,
Oh,
and that
wow.
took me out for a day or two. I was really upset about it. Now, with something like that, I know with my closing team just to drip those deals in, with somebody like him. Just drip them in, make show all of your work, and that's something I tell my team a lot because we'll do a lot of work behind the scenes, and I'll notice that my team that's talking to the client isn't really saying, "Hey, we sent those photos back for editing 8 times to get all the junk out of the apartment." Don't just send the photo. Say, "Hey, this is our eighth iteration. That's why it's 2 days later. What do you think?" Not just here because you have to show your work, so we do show the work a lot more. We've created more systems where landlords can be much more involved on like the tour feedback cards and, even people very high up that never look at these things. I'm like, do you want to look at them in the beginning so you could see? And then at night, it'll be 11 o'clock at night. And they're like, hey, this guy that toured that wanted to put in that offer, take it. Like, they get really into the work, seeing the work. So I think that's kind of what I changed off of there because I didn't show all the work. I just made it look kind of flawless and handed this package. And it's like, show your work, show when you started working, show it took 2 months to build up this open house. It's not just like, I showed one open house and we got these deals. That's not actually how it went down. Show the work, or if it's doing really well, stop from his perspective or look from his perspective and say, should we be charging more rents if this seemed really easy to rent? Should we be raising stuff on the spot? Things like that. So, but that was a hard one. But now that stuff, nothing surprises me anymore that landlords do. So I'm just like, okay, if that's what you want. But before that was really devastating.
Interested in a unique franchise opportunity? iTrip Vacations provides a unique business opportunity in a thriving industry. iTrip offers an executive level income potential with work-life balance in an exclusive territory. As an iTrip franchisee, you'll provide a full array of short-term rental property management services for the properties that you manage. iTrip offers extensive support and training requiring no previous experience. Visit us online at itripfranchise.com to learn more.
I love the fact that you're talking about show your work. And we can, in property management, we have certain markets they're usually rented like the market that one of my vacation rentals is in. It's already rented like it's July the 15th. So the whole season up till now is rented because they offer that week to the people that are coming in for next year. And there's a certain amount of increase that we'll have in our rent, but it'll be something kind of similar. And I think that for property managers, guys, when we do that, the homeowners do look at that and they're like, it's already rented for the whole season. Maybe we should charge a lot more. No, they've done an incredible job of marketing that home to the person that's staying there and have offered them an incentive so that your house is booked next year. And I think that,
Yeah.
as a homeowner, we look at that and we're like, well, we probably could have gotten an extra 1,000 for that. No, I don't think you could. I think it's absolutely, they're going to work. Your property manager is going to work on it next January, which is when we normally release the amount of rent that it's going to be for this year. And if it goes well, you have almost a full calendar already. And if it doesn't, if they're not pricing it, if they're pricing it too high, then you won't.
Well, in
So,
those days
yeah,
vacant, you never get back, you never get back.
exactly.
And turn costs, you don't get back. A lot of times in shorter term rentals, if you could get the same family in there, they already know what they're getting. You're not dealing with people that come in and say this wasn't represented right, or you're not dealing with a family that is going to cause God knows how much damage. There's a real value and cost associated with having repeat renters in short term listings because you're not going to have the phone calls, the management hours, the breaks, the toilet paper down the toilet bowl. Like what's going to happen and the cost of repairs. There is actually a tangible number you can put on repeats.
I have to agree with that. I think that it's invaluable in a lot of ways. Number one, it creates we have families at one of our beaches where my family has a property management company that have been renting there. They've been coming for 25 years. And their family has already always come, and then their grandfather dies or the grandmother dies, and they come back. And there is such a value because you're marketing to people that you already know love the area,
Yeah.
and and they love being there. So I agree
When you could
100%.
really target your renovations also, because if you had a 23-year-old house, you'd probably have to do much, much deeper renovations where with them, they can probably say one or two things that are falling apart, but you don't have to renovate the whole thing.
No, they already love the house. Let me ask you this, and I know this is a trick question I'm going to ask, but talk to me about work life balance, because real estate sales and the investor pieces that you're doing, they are really fast paced. And we know that from being in real estate. Tell me how you balance your work life.
It's tricky, to be honest, because a lot of times it does come down to me with the clients that we have, the developer clients. They don't really want somebody filling in that often, especially on their weekly meetings or critical times. So there are some meetings. There's about 5 or 6 that I do every single week, no matter what. And if I can't be on, my COO will jump on, but she's handling a project in Texas. But it's tricky. So everyone's like, well, why can't you take like Tuesdays off? And I'm like, it really has to be. I think when I rescheduled with you is because sadly my dog passed away and I
I
was
am
just a
so
disaster.
sorry.
So I was like, there's no way, I could do, or I was in the hospital with her. It was the whole thing. And it's very rare that I will skip a meeting or reschedule because or else it's just going to be more work later. But I have really good where I'm not strong. I hate the closings side of things. So I do have 3 closing managers that work 7 days a week. So as deals come in and they need that closing stuff, paperwork, all of that part at least is handled. I've got really strong listing people as listings come in that I don't have to look at day to day. I usually have to approve all pricing, but I can do that in time blocks. So, the work life balance is just trying to find people, getting people around you that you could trust, that you don't feel that they make mistakes, that if they have an answer to something, you believe it's the right answer, that you're not questioning them. Where it hasn't worked is when I start to question people's answers or they're giving the wrong answers or not an answer I would agree with, then all of a sudden I have to check all their work and it's not worth it. So finding people that will kind of speak in your voice, speak in your tone, give answers that you believe in. You don't even have to call them because somebody will say, so and so said this, and I'll say, no, they didn't. And I don't have to check because they didn't. And that's really the people that you kind of need to surround yourself with to start to build out that balance.
I love that. Steve Schwab really preaches that, and he's a leader in our industry. He's one of the founders of Casago, and he just joined Vacasa there, and he says that. And the first time I heard him say that, and I heard him teach on that, I was like, that is like you should shout that from the mountains. To find people that can speak in your own voice, to find people that agree with your culture, so you don't have to second guess yourself, like you just said, and you know that if you heard something, they didn't say that.
Well, and the thing is too is that recognizing what your culture is. Everyone wants to be everything to everyone, and they talk about culture a lot. And, sometimes culture is extremely important, but turning it into somebody else's culture isn't that important to me. We are in a culture, we're very aggressive salespeople. We are very honest and open about mistakes, these things. You could have the best salesperson in the world, but if they're deceptive, to me, that takes up so much more of my time, where it doesn't mean they won't be successful somewhere else. It's just, I don't like people that need a lot of hand holding. I don't like repeating. I don't, it's not that comfortable, my culture all the time for people. But what I've learned over the years is that your culture doesn't have to be this kumbaya culture. Some people, that is their culture, and that's wonderful. And some people, it's just not. It's like, you can call me day or night. The good things about my culture is we are accessible. We work 7 days a week. We're no bullshit, but it's not warm and fuzzy. And once I realized it doesn't have to be, and we could be upfront about that, letting people know, like, I have terrible ADHD. So I try to really lay out for people, hey, if I get off this meeting, I'm not going to remember take notes, because I'm not going to remember what we spoke about. If you need something implemented, make sure we copy me and Charlene, me and Brian, if you want it to be implemented. And just being able to be really upfront about that. It's like, I didn't forget about your birthday. I just don't care about birthdays, and just letting people know that right up front, and then they don't get upset.
I
One
love
year I might
that.
throw you a
Yes.
spectacular party. The next year I will forget it existed. I don't know how to organize my life in a way, because I don't even like to check my calendar every day. There are certain days I like to be totally offline. And I think the more upfront you could be about what your culture is, then you could find people to fill it. But sometimes we'll get people who want to create XYZ culture in my company, and I'll let them know I don't have time to do that. Nor do I think the resources are well put over there.
So
I've tried to do it. I've really, really tried, and I just don't care.
I'm so with you. This is so amazing because I 100%, I understand where you're coming from, and I wonder how many people in hospitality out there are like that. Because me too, completely ADHD, and it's really amazing because in my company, when I took it over, my culture was work, work, work. We're just working. I'm sorry, I know your kid has to go to the doctor. Okay, take the kid to the doctor, but I'm not going to sit there and worry for you with what's happening. I mean, it's not that I don't care, and it's not that I don't have empathy. It's that I have a calendar and I have a schedule. I hired, but this is funny. I hired somebody as the CEO of the company who did have that warm and fuzzy, and I had such respect for him. He was like one of my first clients. He managed one of the businesses that I was working with, and I met him, and I was like, he is an amazing person. I'd love him to mentor me, and so eventually I hired him to be the CEO of my company. Everyone loved him. I mean, they loved him. And I mean, he was always empathetic, he's kind, he takes the time to listen. He'll listen to everything you have to say,
Yeah.
and then afterwards he's very quiet and calm, and he'll straighten you out, but he's still the kind of person that you would want, do you wanna listen to? He's the kind of person that I'd, wanna listen to, but that's not me, and
Yeah.
I don't lead that way. And so, like, that's the reason I hired him to manage the people that needed that kumbaya. So good, but that
Yeah. No,
just
we
was
just
not
hired
me.
someone that, is really concise on emails, bullets, will make sure the job gets done. So when people are like going on and on the phone with me about, whatever, and I'm like, this sounds like a Brian conversation, because you lost me like 15 minutes, like, call Brian, he will take down all of your notes and he'll make sure it gets done. Bradley's
Exactly.
similar. Nothing falls through the cracks. To me, I'm a giant crack. Like, if you're talking at me and I'm not interested. So I think just letting
I
people know
agree.
who they can go to for that kind of affection or attention, and who they can't, but a lot of times people come to me when they want really decisive answers on pricing. They want really quick, decisions and stuff like that. But it's
Yeah, I
I think you
understand.
just have to be upfront about who your managers are, who you've got right now, who you'd like to get in the future, but you don't have it right now. And if that's what you're looking for, and the more honest you could be with people, I think the better they'll fit. Because a lot of the people that work for me have worked for me for over a decade. Some of them, even before I started this company, are still with me, but they're those type of people. They know they'll raise something to the top of my email because they know it's on page 6 right now and I'm never going to see it, and we get along,
They'll
but
continue
you
to
just have to
text
know
me
what
over
your
and
culture
over.
is. Yeah.
Exactly. They continue to
Yeah,
text me over and over until it gets done, and I'll say,
exactly.
"Yeah, please, please, please do that. I'm happy to do that." Let's ask I want to know, you've been so successful in your business and in terms of your business growth, it's just extraordinary. What do you hope, to achieve in the next few years? What's your plan?
It's a great question. I just hired a coach to kind of go over that. But for me, what I'd like to do, I think it's an excellent time right now in New York because the rents are so high. We're in a period where you can own something for cheaper than renting it. So I really want to kind of get that message out there to a lot of our clients because they're very disappointed with what they find for the money. And we have so many clients, we something like 15,000 a month or something like we'll get lead wise or a year. I don't remember. It's an absurd number. Most coaches look at it and they're like, that's not even manageable. But what I'd like to do is actually start educating people purchasing because that's how people are going to get out of this phase of renting. It's how you're going to be able to build equity. It's how you're going to be able to create generational wealth. In New York, it's very much a renter culture. It's not that hard to buy. It's not as hard as people think. And for instance, I could rent you a $4,000 studio, or you can own a one bed in the same neighborhood for $3,600 a month all in. Let's look at it at least, because I do think that's actually sometimes working in real estate, you're just making rich people richer and you don't feel that great because there's no real contribution. Where I do think that getting more people into homes that maybe would have rented a couple more years is something that would make my team and I feel good. The other thing, I love working for developers, we love turnaround projects, taking on whole buildings. Like that's fulfilling work, just from a monopoly standpoint to be like, all right, this asset was worth this and now it's worth this. Like that's great. But I think getting more renters into buying
Homes.
situations, into homes, and they could start building equity would actually fill our hearts a little bit. And that's kind of the direction I'm going to go instead of trying to convert people into a new rental, convert them into a sale. I haven't really done that in the past, but I think that's what I don't see this housing situation in New York getting any better for anybody, especially that's new to the market. One good thing that came out of these laws is that you have to allow people to assign their lease by law. So the good thing about that is if you take a rental and you need us to re-rent it, we can do that. We're great at that. So if a sale closes and you need to get out of your lease 4 months early, we can help you with that now. And by law, they have to allow
You
it. So
can
that is one
assign
thing in
it.
that law that I did like, because I do think that if you can find someone to take over your apartment, it should be allowed. And before this law passed, it wasn't. And it always just felt kind of tacky. It's like, this person needs to get out of this lease. We can replace them. You won't lose $1. Like they have to be qualified. Let us do the work, but like let them out. Like to put somebody under that hardship when you can find somebody to take over or assign the debt, basically, the remainder, why not? I like assignability in mortgages. I mean, they don't allow it, but I think assignability and everything from mortgages to rentals is important. And then the landlord reserves the right to take the unit back. So if they don't want to rent it for the exact same amount, they can say, no problem. We did two just this morning where the person's like, I need to assign my lease. I need to leave at this month. And we go to the landlord. We say, hey, they're paying 31, but we think we can get 35. And they're like, great, take it back. So they just get let out of their lease. No penalty.
So there are some assumable mortgages. I did a podcast with someone at the end of last year that was telling me a strategy, especially when the interest rates were, so high, they'd gone so quickly. They're like, "Oh yeah, we do assumable mortgages all the time. We use this attorney. We do it this way." And I was like,
Hmm.
"Okay, that's thinking out of the box." But going
They
back to
used to
your
be assumable,
a hundred
but they've
percent,
changed.
a
There's
hundred
so many
percent,
fees.
yeah.
It's like mortgages make money off the fees, I feel like. So they just want those fees again and
But
again.
even if you allow the fees, it would be great to have it assignable. So
Yeah.
say there are the fees, it would still be great to do that.
It would add value to your house for
A
sure.
hundred
And if you're
percent.
okay with taking that mortgage on that payment plan before, what changed?
I agree. The
Yeah.
um the interesting thing you just said was the thing about helping people get out of rent. That was when I first got into real estate, that was really my heart. I had never owned a home. I had only rented. Never well, I owned a home, but I mean I'd owned it for many years and it was my parents lived there. So I didn't really feel like I owned a home. Um I took it over because they could not. So I thought that that was really important, and I remember at the time, and it wasn't illegal, but I probably did about 1,000 flyers, and I went to the expensive rentals, and I would literally put things up where they got their mail. I would, wherever it was allowed, I would put it in the leasing offices or under the, under the doors or whatever I was allowed to. And what I showed them was that here's the amount you're paying for rent if you have a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. If you were to purchase, here's how you can purchase with no money down. Here's how you can purchase with just a little bit of money down. And here are the people you can talk to do it. And I mean, I feel like that is such a service that you can
Yeah.
do for people because people don't really, I mean, you've rented, you don't really think that you can afford a home or that you can own your own home. But
Yeah. And we find in New York, a lot of people do have access to that cash for the down payment.
yeah,
It's people are looking for places to invest it, and what better. But in my 22 years, it was never really that way. Owning was always a little bit more per month, and then the down payment and this and that. Where now it's kind of it's less than what the rents are, and I don't see without new development, I don't see the rents getting any easier or any better. So, building equity, I think, is extremely important. It's one of the best decisions I made was buying a home, and I almost backed out of it. Thank God I didn't, because that's a giant part of my portfolio now, my
it
retirement
is.
plan.
It is mine
So
too.
I can take more risks at work. I can do these things because I know at least I have that to fall back on.
And now you look at how many homes you own and you go, how did I do that? How did I end up with so many, so many homes? I was talking
I
with
know
my,
I only have one, but I should probably buy
oh,
more. I
I
might I
was
might buy
talking with
one for
my
my
dad last
sister
week.
and rent it to her or something.
You should do that. I
She's
got to
very
tell you,
trustworthy.
for those of us that are in real estate, it kind of happened with me. And I'm like, how do I have 5 homes now? How is that possible? And,
Good for you.
I'm like,
That's awesome.
it's just, well, and I think it's just that deals come up and they go. And I've only sold one of my rental homes, and I had to sell that to buy back a business. So there you
Mhm.
go. I just want to say thank you so much, Carla, for
You are
taking the
welcome so
time.
much. It's so
S-
wonderful to meet you.
It was a lot of fun. And I think that, New York real estate, for a lot of us, even if we've been in real estate for many years, it's like this big dark hole. And you're like, oh,
It
that's something,
is. That's
you,
something confusing. Yeah.
yes, and, who can break into it? And I know, Inhabit has a lot of software that they do on the long-term rental side out of New York. We have firms out of New York. And I'm just when I talk to them, it's like it's another world. So
It
thank you for
is.
sharing your other world
Of
with us.
course. And any future questions, just email me.
Okay,
I'm
and
I'm happy to answer.
I'm really sorry about your puppy. That makes me
Yeah,
sad
that was
about your
like the
dog.
worst month of my life. I don't know if you've ever had a dog get
No,
lymphoma, but it
yes, of
was like
course.
she wasn't even 5 yet. She turns 5 in October. It was so devastating that I was
Especially
just
when
a
they're ill.
disaster. I couldn't believe it was happening because cancer doesn't really run in my family. And I just looked at her like, well, if I birthed you, how do you have cancer? And then I'm thinking, actually, I found you on the side of a road and bought you off kind of a junkie.
Well, there
So
are
anything is
hearts,
possible. She is my
There
whole
are
heart.
there are
Yeah.
hearts. So we
And I'm
all,
like,
I'm
I
sure.
birthed you. We don't get cancer. And then I'm like, I didn't actually, I guess, but she was just such a part of my family. So
They're part of
I
your
was a
heart.
disaster,
Well,
but
we
I'm getting
all
there.
are
I'm
in
getting
those
better.
times. So my heart and
Yeah, no,
prayers
it's
with you
wild.
on that. And thank you again for coming. And
Of
um,
course.
please give my regards to Bradley and tell him to continue
I will.
posting. I'm just loving it.
I love his new posts also on LinkedIn. They're
Yes.
so professional and good. Like he's doing so good. So
He's
I
such
I
a real
complimented him on
person.
those the other day. He's fantastic. I'll let him know.
Thank you. All
And
right.
he'll get this video, so he'll see all of our praise.
All right. Well,
Okay,
blessings
thank
and
you.
thanks
All
again. All
right,
right.
bye.
Bye.
This episode of How We Grow was brought to you by iTrip Vacations. To find out more about how iTrip Vacations can help to grow your vacation rental business, visit itripfranchise.com. Make sure to search for How We Grow in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. On behalf of the team here at Inhabit, thanks for listening.